First and foremost, thank you very much for having me here. I'd like to thank the university, Stephanie, and also Lisa. Thank you for being here, Mr. President, and also all of you for being here and inviting me. Well, finally, I reached one of my dreams and personal goals. I always wanted to be able to come and study. It was my first option to come and study in Sciences Po in France. Well, I was not as lucky as you to be able to study here, but finally I managed to be here. But unfortunately, this side of the table. Today I was actually in Senate. I spoke with great friends over there. Speaking there was much easier than here. Usually in university I was the other side, and still that anxiety of like coming up and answering the questions and telling the answers and stuff. It's probably that anxiety is coming back to me. However, it's a great honor to be here, and thank you very much for that introduction. Well, I will cut it short, and I'll try to answer that and also to explain to our friends in here what has happened in Afghanistan and what was the causes and what made it to reach to this catastrophic situation. The second part is going to be what have we done in the past 2 years and why I'm here in Europe. And probably that will be also explaining the question, which is how is the situation on the ground. Well, the causes of the problem in Afghanistan, it varies. It is very complicated. In my opinion, any social phenomenon and a political phenomenon, it cannot be described as a very, how to say, it's just one-sided or one-dimensional. It is not that easy. It is everything, in my opinion, is very much more complicated, because we human beings, we are complicated beings. Intellectual creatures are complicated beings. So therefore, our social and political phenomena are not a simple thing. So is the situation of my country, but we are unfortunate to be located in a place that always the regional rivalry and the international rivalry was keep showing itself in Afghanistan. For this, I need to emphasize that the key or element of the chaos that took a toll on Afghanistan for 50 years, that started after the Cold War. And after the Cold War, or during the Cold War actually, this rivalry between the powers of America and the Soviets, it came to show itself slowly after the Iranian Revolution and in Afghanistan. The expansion of the Russian and the intention to get to the warm waters, and the easiest and the closest path being Afghanistan, it triggered the West to basically take action. The toppling of the neutral government of King Zahir and by Dawood Khan, and after that the coming and the coup of communist regimes in Afghanistan, following by the invasion of Russia, it surfaced the rivalry to a whole new level. The people of Afghanistan were always unfortunate, but it was the first time that this rivalry was on a whole new level. It was a proper full-on fight going on in Afghanistan. At this time, way before the direct intervention of the international community, especially the West, in support of the people of Afghanistan to fight the Soviets, the people, they were showing their discomfort and their anger, and also not being happy in this sense that this totalitarian regime is coming and is in charge. At the same time, they're trying to change the fabric of our society. For example, pushing the people toward basically believing that there is no God, or in this sense that the communist governments were to some extent very aggressive toward the religious beliefs of the people. Such actions, it had a torn in the fabric of our society, and slowly it reached to the level that the people started protesting, started uprising, started rioting. And my father was one of the students, like all of you, at university. By the increase of the pressure of the communist governments and also that mentality and ideology, he was starting to feel oppression, and he started to fight against it. First, as part of the students, with protesting. Unfortunately, the government used lethal force, used violence against the peaceful protest of the people of Afghanistan, and slowly it expanded to full-on fight between the people and the communist government. A bit later, there was an intervention of international community. They supported Mujahideen. The Mujahideen were very successful in keeping the Russians first in Afghanistan busy, and at the end to be able to manage to defeat them, or to reach them to the point that they admit that they cannot win in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, one thing that happened through that time was this belief that extremism, or Islamic extremism, is a very useful geopolitical tool to use against such ideologies and against expansion of the Soviets. So therefore, through such plans and beliefs, there were created there were a lot of madrasas, jihadi madrasas created in Pakistan, and a lot of these fanatics were also being attracted to come and fight in Afghanistan. Let me tell you something, actually, a story of some Arab fighters who came to Afghanistan to fight, but after the Afghanistan's liberation, Afghanistan's jihad victory, they wanted to return to their country, but they were refused to even enter their own country because they were being changed into fanatics, into extremists, and their country felt the danger. And that is why if the new generation, if you know that after the jihad of Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden managed to go to Saudi Arabia. He was in Saudi Arabia. He was in Riyadh for a couple of years, as a matter of fact. But then the Saudi Arabian government started to realize that being in Afghanistan, being in fight, being basically in this conflict has changed Osama bin Laden in an extent that now he wants to expand and he wants to explore other areas and other countries, and he wants to basically bring his sort of freedom and his mentality and ideology to the other and to the rest of the country, the globe, including Saudi Arabia, which forced Saudi Arabia to put him in exile, to send him to exile, and he was sent to Sudan, I think, or in Africa, and from there he came to Afghanistan. So you see that, unfortunately, geopolitical games and geopolitical games, it was one of the main reasons for creation of these Islamic extremism. Although that throughout the history of Islam we had fanatics and we had extremism. As a matter of fact, two pillars of Islamic history and two big imams, Uthman and Ali, and two caliphs of Islam, they were being murdered and assassinated by fanatics, by extremists, Islamic extremists. So from the beginning it existed, but always the majority moderates, they managed to contain them. They managed to destroy them. They called them Khawarij. So why now it is a problem? It is, as I explained, because of the geopolitical games and how superpowers and regional powers, they feel and they found use in such devastating and cheap tool. And came the second resistance, the first resistance that after the complete abandonment of the world, after the defeat of the Russians, the world paid basically their head back to their back to Afghanistan. They forgot about it, and in this situation, unfortunately, these extremists, they started to grow and grow, and that's why in the 90s the Taliban from this was being created. Very extreme groups with brutal force that they want nothing but full dominance with that touch of Islamic extremism. At that stage, Ahmad Massoud, realizing the nature of the Taliban, stood against them. And he managed to do the job that for the next 20 years, almost 40 countries of NATO and Afghanistan could not do it. And the reason he was able to the reason he was being able to bring them to a stalemate, it was that he knew their ideology and he created a clear narrative to fight them. And second, he knew the geography of Afghanistan, the social structure, and his connection and commitment to the people, and it worked wonders in bringing that sort of realization and preventing the further spread of the Taliban, to the point that at the end the Taliban realized they cannot defeat Ahmad Shah Massoud on the ground, so they used the method of assassination. After my father's assassination, there was an era of 20 years of international intervention in Afghanistan, which once again, it was both good reasons and good achievements, but at the same time there were some bad mistakes and decisions. From creating a government which was so and highly centralized that in a multi-ethnic and multicultural country like Afghanistan, this highly centralized government, it created a race within different ethnicities and groups to get to that very small window of power, and that was the president. And this truly divided our country into fractions, into groups, into different ethnicity. Such as that to the agreement of Americans with the Taliban, which was catastrophic. It completely destroyed the balance of negotiation, and single-handedly both the agreement with the Taliban and also the unconditional withdrawal, it collapsed the government of Afghanistan, and it brought the current situation. Of course, there were many factors such as the incompetence of Afghanistan's leadership, the corruption, and so on and so forth. However, these are minor reasons compared to the agreement with the Taliban, which completely demoralized the soldiers on the ground and Afghanistan army and completely destroyed the balance of negotiation. And then it came 15th of August 2021. I'm just rushing to finish as soon as possible the introduction and also the first part, so we can have time for question and answer. There was a time that we knew that Afghanistan was going to collapse, and we have to stand. On 15th of August, prior to 15th of August, a few countries, they offered their support, they've offered their help personally to me for a way out. Well, me and many more people like me, and also which is also in the book, it was not a metaphor. Actually, I stood in front of a mirror and I was having a conversation with myself on the eve of the collapse of Afghanistan. It was horrible. There was fear everywhere, and the people were very much anxious, and you could see people running, and you could see the officials leaving the country. Ashraf Ghani, the president, is with bags of dollars and the cars running toward the airport to leave the country, and so on and so forth. So it was a very chaotic and desperate situation. I remember that night I was looking at myself in the mirror and I was like, what to do? Should I leave the country or should I stay? If I stay, I knew there's a fatigue in the West, so there is no help from the West. And I knew because of the presence of NATO in Afghanistan, the regional countries, they created a link and a tactical cooperation with the Taliban for making the NATO to withdraw from Afghanistan. So, of course, they are not going to invest into another war, and they are not going to support. So basically, it means no support from outside, no support at all from the West, especially, and the people are all alone. I had two choices: a catastrophic war or a shameful peace. And then we basically juggled and checked that what to do. After a serious consideration and also seeking advice and thinking about it, we reached this conclusion. Actually, with one of my friends, Mr. Dashi, I talked about it, what to do about it. And this is a very serious situation. The people's life is going to be in danger, and the country is going to collapse and everything. And I remember still what he says, and it was that sometimes principle worth 1,000 lives. So it was that moment that we had to make the decision. And we believe that after 20 years especially of preaching to the people of Afghanistan, democracy, freedom, human's right, women's right, then the time came that we have to prove that we are willing to stand with them for these values. Otherwise, if we would leave the country, or we would submit to the will of the Taliban and submit to them and accept their government, it means that whatever we preached, it was nothing but a lie. So we stood on principles, and we believed that standing on those principles, even if it means death, it's worth living 1,000's life with no principle, with no value. And that was the main thing. And after that, we were inspired by the first resistance, the resistance of my father, which he was inspired by many examples, especially the resistance of France and General de Gaulle. And that how he created the narrative, and especially the word resistance, and then how it was being followed by organization, and then how it was followed by fighting, and at the end how it all paid off for the liberation. And that is exactly the path we followed. That narrative, the narrative was being created after the Taliban refused our constant request for dialogue, negotiation, and talks. They were constantly pressing for submission and surrender. That's all. They did not want to talk about anything else. When it was being proved to our people and to all of us, and we want to show to the world that also we tried the way of talking, they refused, the narrative of resistance was being created. And then it was the organization. And also, 2 years, I didn't travel and I didn't request anything, I didn't go anywhere. Especially, I didn't come to France. Because for 2 years we had to prove to the world few things. First, Taliban have not changed. Do not give in to this illusion that the Taliban have changed, or there is moderate Taliban, or there is changed Taliban, Taliban 2.0. First and foremost, get rid of this idea. Second, even in the absence of international forces, the people of Afghanistan are not going to give up on those principles which we share in 2023. And lastly, it is that it is time for all the opposition of the Taliban to get together and unite. Well, we achieved all three. We resisted for 2 years. The Taliban tried and brought thousands and thousands of their own forces alongside international and regional terrorist groups in Afghanistan. Yes, we lost 500 people, and people of Afghanistan lost thousands, but still we exist, and we are expanding, and we are improving. Second, we have an organization, and we have a narrative. And lastly, I can say that the opposition of the Taliban are united on those principles which I mentioned, which is very important. And now we are here, and I'm here to say that the first part of our work, it is very clear, it is done. Now it is time for the international world to pay attention. It is time for EU to pay attention. The situation in Afghanistan is very dire. It needs attention. It doesn't mean boots on the ground. It doesn't need soldiers on the ground. We never want that. My father never asked for soldiers on the ground. Actually, he downright refused this type of support because he knew it's not going to work. But any other means of support for the democratic people of Afghanistan, especially the women of Afghanistan, it is not only welcomed, but it should be a must, because they're all alone and they are in the front line of fighting and defending the global democracy against the global oppression. Unfortunately, the democracy is on retreat, and authoritarianism and totalitarianism is on full-on aggression. So now I'm here to bring this message. We survived, we are here, we are fighting, and yes, we sacrificed a lot, but now the ball is in your court. What do you do? Are we giving in? Just the way that Chamberlain in the World War II gave in, and he was ready to talk and negotiate and engage with Nazis. Or we are going to be the generation and we are going to be the leaders like Churchill, like de Gaulle, to stand on principles that we preach, that we talk about. The principles that brought us decades of security, safety, and prosperity. So choice is yours. What are you going to do? Thank you very much.